Number 428, where we learn to be a better gamer. We're currently examining Marine King Prime and his amazing suave style. Part 1 was a lot of analysis of just sort of high-level theory, right? Of just general ideas of aggression, asking some simple questions, and then watching the very simple bunker rush example that we saw from MKP. We don't want to think about can it win right now. We want to think about what happens once everything's left over with. And of course, for any of you commenting on things like the chipped tooth, yes, the razor burn, perhaps the acne, always remember, it's fine to say as long as it's funny. If you're like, hey, you're having a breakout day 9, no, we don't like that. But if you say something like, hey, Sean, it's great to see that someone's finally using a nidus worm, that is encouraged. Remember, whoever is funny is king. Ha! Now, let's go ahead and hop into the game. Excellent. Here we go. Aw, yeah. Big booty, big booty. Marine King Prime, we're going to finally see this build. We're going to finally see this build and see if the people in chat can stop typing the Nyan Cats. Get ready to hand out dem bands mods. Woo! Now, we're going to see DRG against Marine King Prime on dual site. I'm not going to worry as much about things like what maps is this opening good on. Instead, what I just want to talk about are things like what is the Zerg capable of, what can he do, what can't he do. Now, I'm going to throw out some timings. A pretty swift Spire, a quite swift Spire, will have Mutilus popping out around 10 minutes. That's a pretty swift Spire action. I just want to throw that out there for now. Pretty swift. So we have one barracks in the main, one barracks somewhere else. It's pretty important to have this barracks somewhere else because right now the Zerg thinks either he's early expanding and I need to build a lot of drones, or he's going crazy aggressive 2-racks, which Dong Regu, for the record, spots. He actually spots and sees it. Theoretically, you would say something like, oh, derp derp, I guess this means that I have an easy win, right? I see the 2-racks coming, I see the barracks there. Not necessarily true. Watch the way he does this. Watch the way that he does this. It looks like Dong Regu immediately comes out trying to intercept one of the Marines. Now, Marine King Prime has no pretense of sneakiness. He's actually just going to go for it. He does get nabbed a little bit here, but easy. Just keep pulling back till you have another Marine. 8 Zerglings coming out. Queen at the natural expansion hatchery. And it's at this moment right here that I would like to again point something out. Look at Zerg's money. Zerg did not botch anything too much. Zerg doesn't have a ton of drones out of his main. He has 10 drones there. He didn't spend money on a geyser. He transferred drones here at a reasonable time. He just can't, he literally can't afford. I actually want to list 5 things that Zerg is going to want to think about at this point in time. Because these 5 are really going to be the big key. Again, as we were talking about in part 1, forget what people do, forget what the norms are, forget what the standards are. Think right now in this game, what are the 5 things that Zerg wants? Or 5 of the basics of what Zerg wants. Well, Zerglings and Spine Crawlers, these 2, are 2 of the things that he can possibly get. These are the attacking things. Then there's the macro things, 2 queens and lots of drones. These are these 2 fingers. And of course the pinky is the speed upgrade. Zergling spines, queens and drones, and the speed upgrade for the Zerglings. He can't be getting more than about 3 of them at once. He can be getting Zerglings and a queen, maybe a second queen in a bit, but he can't be doing something like getting a spine crawler and a queen and some Zerglings out and have enough money back in his main to be mining gas and getting a fast Zergling speed. Literally, at this point in time, we can clearly see that Marine King Prime doesn't even need to set foot up in this main to be fairly confident that there's no gas with speed coming. How will he know that? Well, in about 2 seconds, he's going to see a whole bunch of Zerglings, he's going to see a queen pop, and he's going to start getting himself some ideas. So at this point in time, we have the Zerglings from DRG, very straightforward, controlled by Marine King Prime. Literally just wants to try to engage Zerglings as often as he can, and then kite with the Marines. He wants to engage Zerglings. He is going to chase down Zerglings as aggressively as he can. Obviously, this takes incredible control, but he wants to try to chase them down. Why? To force more Zerglings to be made. And just to note, I don't think I said this explicitly, but it's 2 Marines that he's bringing. 2 Marines. So, an expansion command center goes down. Cool. We're still seeing a complete flood of Marines. For the record, these are 2 of the most important structures that you can have in these positions. This is actually a linchpin to the build, as we're going to see in a moment. So great, there's a spine crawler going down right there. This is even further evidence of how far behind our Zerg buddy is. Notice as I come to this unit tab that Zerg is actually behind in terms of workers. Terran is going to keep his Marines together and keep trying to be as aggressive as humanly possible. And of course we have 2 more barracks being planted down. And lots of good old continued Marine aggression. Now these Zerglings are sweeping around the back to try to intercept Marines and this sort of thing. All you gotta do as Marine King Prime is complete the wall off. Just like that. Starting to account for some possibilities. And we're actually not gonna halt up on the aggression. As you can see, there's the obvious benefit of being on dual site. But what we're really trying to do with this entire push is trying to delay drones and delay gas. Those are the 2 biggies. Delay drones and delay gas. So the fact that we can claim to have killed off some workers is great for us. Look at that, 12 workers. Easy peasy Febreze. Now, I don't want you, again, to think of this as the damage that has been done. I don't want you to stop here and say, he's killed 10 workers. That is a good thing. Hooray! That's sort of an approximation. Let me give a ridiculous example. Let's say you have 3 Hellions and no other units. You get into the Zerg's base and kill off 25 workers. Oh! Doesn't mean anything if 30 seconds later he has Mutalisk in your base and you have no anti-air and no anti-air units. Doesn't mean anything. So, in this circumstance, killing 10 workers, yeah, that's good, but we want to go the extra step, and we want to say, what is Zerg left with? What can he do, and what can't he do? So let's start listing them off. A Zerg player who is low on drones, not just because we seem to have killed some off, but also because we've been pretty much consistently forcing Zerglings, by and large. We know that he almost certainly can't be getting some sort of layer tech. We know that he's probably behind on his gas mining. So what we're actually going to do is just pull back and sort of turtle for the time being. And actually, let me back up for just a moment. What the Zerg probably has to do is probably has to drone and probably has to play defensively. And we're sort of in a weird situation ourselves. Now, one thing that I want to talk about at this point in time is what the Terrans used to do in this circumstance. This is pretty common at this point. But what Terrans used to do was get these 2 geysers after they built these 2 barracks, and then they would go factory, and then factory, and they would do some sort of Blue Flame Hellion play. But I want to list off... Oh, let me just note, they would go Blue Flame Hellions thinking, cool, and afterwards I have 2 factories, so then I can begin to make tanks and begin to make Marines. But the issue I have with making those statements right now is that people know Marines and tanks are good because people just kind of build Marines and tanks, and that's some old school thinking that I actually want to ignore for a moment. I want to ask, what can Zerg do? Well, he could very easily do something like build speed Zerglings, or get speed Zerglings, get slow Banelings, not fast Banelings, he needs to get a layer for that, and that's probably hard. He can get slow Roaches, not speed Roaches, he needs a layer to do that. There's all sorts of tier 1 units that he could get. If we went Hellions, what if he had a bunch of Roaches? He might shut us down easily, right? See, these sorts of logic, pretty easy. Could Zerg expand? Dangerously, quite dangerously, he could very well say, you know what, screw it. I'm going to try to tech up to a layer, as quickly as possible. The city of Los Angeles is being extremely loud tonight. Can you guys hear this? Can you actually hear this? Is this driving you insane? Wow. Is that real, or are those like toy sirens? Excellent. Excellent. Wonderful. Cool. Alright, so let's watch what Marine King Prime does. It's partly interesting that he does it, and more interesting why he does it. There could be a whole slew of threats that we could be up against, but interestingly, what Marine King Prime is going to be doing is getting double reactor and a tech lab. With his gas, he is going to do every gas possible thing with the exception of a factory. He's even getting a third refinery here. There's Stim going down. There's Engineering Bay 1. Here comes back down this barracks. He's going to land and add a tech lab to it. Right here. Right here. Come on, get it. Come on. There it is. There's the other tech lab. He's getting Engineering Bay 2. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that require a ton of gas before the factory. And he's just churning the Marines out. Obviously, any sort of Tier 1 all-in, very possible. We're getting a ton of units up right now. Any sort of mix of, I don't know, banelings, roaches, this sort of thing. Those all very possible. And we can easily account for a lot of these. The other possibility is that we're up against a player who's going Mutalisks. And by the way, notice +1, +1. We could be up against a player going Mutalisk who's trying to do some sort of tech to take a third base right now. But I just want to note, 10 minutes to 10 minutes and 30 seconds is about when players who are kind of getting Mutalisk quickly, that's about when they will pop up. But look at the timing of this attack. Marine King Prime forced you to make not that many drones, so you either gotta sprint and struggle to make drones right now, or you gotta make a lot of units. My lot of units will deal well with your lot of units. Also, my lot of units will put a ton of pressure on you if you're teching. For the record, as we can see, Dong Regu is pretty straightforwardly just going for the insta-baneling, some sort of Tier 1 all-in. That's his obvious response. Marine King Prime doing some nice things with building placement, but I want you to see how clean this timing is. That right at 11 minutes, he's going to arrive at his opponent's base and start to move forward. Now, in terms of what he's seen, right around here, what has MKP seen? He has seen just this. There's been no scan, there's been no scouting, he's seen largely Zerglings, but I want to note the significance of the fact that he has not seen roaches, that he has not seen a bunch of speed Zerglings at the front of his base yet. He has, I don't know, pretty much those are the only two things he would possibly have seen, but even then we're accounting for all these possibilities by following up with a huge number of Marine Marauder. Now this can backfire. It is possible for it to backfire and have you run into a whole bunch of banelings or something like that, but there's no risk of burrowed banelings. He can't possibly have a layer and a lot of banelings yet. We have this all-in that does some damage. And we have this nice, easy, clean, smooth play. Just demolishing his main. Nice. Excellent. We did some pretty clean damage. We obviously didn't win that battle directly. But that's okay, because Marine King Prime, now starting 2-2 upgrades, my opponent cannot possibly have 1-1 and be getting a layer. I mean, maybe he can get 1-1, but there's definitely no layer coming up. Marine King Prime is literally forcing all the confrontations to be at the Zerg's front door again and again and again and again. And obviously there's all sorts of questions like, what about in this circumstance? What about in that circumstance? That's what we're going to be looking at for the rest of the daily. All sorts of other circumstantial, situational stuff that you want to be in. And MKP just sort of calmly, oh, are you going for Baneling, Ling all in? No problem, Dong Regu knows that was his last hope, and just cleaned up pretty simply. Pretty standard transition after you open with these 4 barracks and this +1/+1. is just to go straight for the medevacs. Just skip getting the tanking up, as you just don't quite have enough gas to do all those things. So what I want to do is I want to explore a completely different situation where we'll again see kind of a similar opening. It's not the exact same thing that Marine King Prime will do, but it's similar enough. Similar enough. As we're stepping into this game, I think we'll be able to do all of it, and if not, no big deal. We'll just go on to a part number 2 or something like that. Yeah, cool. So we go for the 2 racks. For any of you hyper curious, I do believe it's a 12-13 racks, or is it 12-14? I know it was different in some of his games. There's a 12 racks and yeah, 12-14. Pretty economic. We're not going all out, balls out like an 11-11 racks or something nuts. Because it's not about that we can kill our opponent, it's that we have incredibly good control. And we can sort of fix it. And remember the 2 SCVs that were involved in the attack? Well, they're just the 2 SCVs that built the barracks. We're going into some of the specifics of it, but yeah, right now, we're going to step into this particular situation. Alright, excellent. It looks like MVP, literally 10 lings, spine, and a queen. And $0 left over. 25. Pff, yeah, I guess he could make a geyser, but he's feeling under a lot of pressure. And Marine King Prime has some really nice control. This could win the game, but it's not about that. Look at this, aggressively chasing down all Zerglings. As aggressively as he humanly possibly can. And then Dong Regu, with literally perfect timing, takes out all the Marines right beforehand. But Marine King Prime still salvages. Still getting our command center. Still able to kill off a lot of Zerglings. It's never stopping the Marine production. Never at all. Nothing like halting and adding on to refineries right away. This is really the brilliance of Marine King Prime style, is that he recognizes that, yeah, I'm committed to doing some pressure with Tier 1. I don't want to give Zerg this huge, gigantic leg up. And there's the 2 refineries coming in. We're actually going to see Marine King Prime do something a little different. He's actually building a 5th barracks. But I don't want you to translate it into a completely different situation instead. Let me actually pull back, and I want to look at just what's going on in Camp Zerg. In the first game, Dong Regu didn't even get this far. He wasn't even this fortunate. In the units lost tab, we see just 2 workers killed off by Marine King Prime. Just 2. But still only 14 workers, and in the production, still only units. This really sets the Zerg quite far behind. I'm actually going to go to the Dong Regu camp, so that way we don't get too obsessed with what Marine King Prime is doing. I actually want to just note right now Dong Regu getting up his 2nd queen. This is very standard in this matchup, getting the 2 queens. And again, I don't want to say standard in terms of the culturally we know it's correct to have 2 queens, and if you only have 1 queen, then you are a terrible Zerg, because that's not what Nest T does. I don't want you to think of it like that. I want you to think of it like 2 queens is great. 2 queens is really good. It's a really common thing to do. I mean, Zerg could be going for ultra mega fast layer, and you might say, well, what happens in that circumstance day 9? And I'll say, don't worry, we're looking at that in part 3. In this one, though, we're seeing 2 queens fairly calmly, confidently adding on a whole bunch of larvae, 2 geysers, 3 geysers going down now. And let me just note that if you have 1 geyser, and then you mine 100 gas from it, and then you get Zergling speed, the amount of time from when you start getting that geyser to the moment Zergling speed ends is 3 minutes. That's 3 minutes of time. So let's say, for instance, you do this marine pressure, and you're pretty sure that he hasn't been able to really mine that much gas. You've seen a lot of slow lings. You saw a spine, you saw a queen, you saw a lot of lings for a good amount of time. Probably can't have started speed that soon. You don't know if he has 1 gas or 2 gas, or maybe taking 3 gas like Dong Regu, so you know what? Bump it down to 2 minutes. My aggression stopped at 5 minutes. I'm not worried about Zergling speed until 7 minutes. Don't you feel great now? That's incredibly easy. Very, very nice situation. So what do we see from Dong Regu? Just now starting to mine gas. I would be hard-pressed to ask any other Zerg player if they could re-execute this any smoother. We're just getting ahead in the drone count. We're making more drones. Our energy's low. We're actually spending our energy incredibly nicely. I mean, look at this. As down low to 0 as you get. And yet over here, we're seeing Marine King Prime get his tech labs. This is the point in time where I actually need to bounce back and forth between these two players a good amount. We see all these extra barracks popping up. Now at this first 100 gas, what are you going to do? Are you going to get a layer? Are you going to be getting Zergling speed? I'll also note that in this unit station, oh no, it looks like Terran is suddenly falling behind. He was ahead in workers before, now he's behind, but soon enough we're going to see that Zerg just can't really get that many more drones than 50. Or 58 or so. So, okay, cool, he gets the Zergling speed up. Fantastic. We even waltz an Overlord up there, and we see that there's 2 barracks in here, 2 barracks out there. So you know what? We're getting a Roach War. That seems pretty reasonable, right? I mean, what if the Terran player, I mean, it's about 2 minutes for combat shield to finish. So that means that we're actually running the risk of having an attack come in at like 9:30 or 10. Do we think we can hold that off with all Zerglings? Maybe we can get some Banelings. But hell, if we got the Banelings, suddenly we're also getting in the way of our layer tech and our other things. And look at how much stuff Marine King Prime has. So DRG saves up his larva. Alright, he's gonna meet it head on. 12 roaches, 13 roaches. 14 roaches, really going crazy. Now, in this game, Marine King Prime didn't get the double ups. He actually got just a really fast combat shield as quickly as he could, and now there's sort of a delayed stim. But once again, we're going plus upgrades. This is the sort of interesting twist that Marine King Prime is placing on. He's like dedicating his life hardcore to this sort of stuff. And as we can see, there's the scan, the very nicely placed scan. And remember how I was like, oh wow, look, 36 to 26. Now it's 36 to 37. In fact, in the income tab, Terran is ahead. Pretty unusual at this phase in the game. And what do we do against a whole bunch of roaches? No big deal. Did you know that Marines move at the exact same speed as roaches, 2.25 off creep? Just poking back, and look at this, we can actually just retreat away from it. What about these pesky Zerglings? Well, that's actually not a problem to deal with at all. As we see from MKP. And he's even going to do cool things like try to snipe off one roach at a time. Look at this, we actually are not up in that sort of engagement. So, I just want to note for the moment, we're actually going to take a break and then we're going to finish this game. But I want to note that in terms of this mid-game, we could have been up against a lot of speed Zerglings, and you know what that means? We lose all our Marine Marauder, and we know the Zerg can't really be doing too well in terms of his tech, and can't really be doing too well in terms of our drone count. Easy. Sure, we will lose everything, and that is great, because Zerg no way can have that much else accomplished. That's fine. If we're up against some Banelings, we can just pull back off creep, because Banelings, without speed, are not that scary. And Roaches, one of the least scary things of all. It's pretty cool. And I just want to emphasize for the record that this is not an auto-win build. There's easy arguments against this. As Zerg, you can say something like, well, okay, you just make sure that you don't get too aggressive, you tech up pretty slowly, and then you try to, just defend and make sure you have good upgrades. So if you're doing this Terran play and you're up against a pretty defensive Zerg, you just sort of go on into the later game. But the important thing is that what Marine King Prime is doing right now with this follow-up aggression is forcing our Zerg player into a couple of canals. He either has a pretty good defense with not that good of worker count. He's either making a ton of units riding out to meet us, which means he has a terrible worker count. Maybe his worker count is too damn high and we can just kill him. Either way, we're seeing that the options for Zerg are quite limited. And this is one thing that Marine King Prime is brilliant at, is being so aggressive. It's obvious that Marine King Prime has about 2 possible things that he can do. He is just displaying his aggression with combat shield marines and marauders and barracks walling off his front. You know he's going to come in with a barracks attack, but it's not the surprise that makes it strong, and it's not the number of possibilities that makes it strong. It's the fact that it's really, 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 really aggressive and just powerful and meaty that makes it strong, and that's what we like. So let's wrap up in part number 3 after this 2-minute break. Yeah! Yeah!